Full spoilers ahead for The Boys. If you still want to go watch it, do it now. I'll wait. And this video contains mentions of sexual assault, but I don't really explore them or bother going into much detail. Still, felt it deserved a bit of a warning. Here's a tiny warning. This video's been on my mind for a long time. I started watching The Boys a few months ago and the urge to binge was high, but I managed to hold out and carefully drip-fed this series to myself over the course of a few weeks, taking the time to properly reflect on every episode as it came. It was hard. This is a really good show. Season 1 came and went, I adored it, and I eagerly dove into Season 2, and at some point during that runtime, I came to a stunning realization. It just wasn't very good. It was still okay, it was fine, definitely an average series, but by the time Season 3 hit me like a bag of cocks, I just kinda knew it had run its course. One of the most famous TV shows of the decade, as early as the decade is, of course, and it was kind of in the toilet by the end of Season 3. Rough stuff, not even remotely enjoyable by the end. Oh dear. But before I get into it, a short word from our sponsor for today's video, Flexispot Standing Desks. May I present to you the Flexispot Standing Desk. The Flexispot Standing Desk was a beautiful little mahogany vixen I selected because mahogany was my favourite wood in Minecraft, and now I get to take a little bit of that luxury home with me, complete with a seductive matte black base and stand. Woohoo-wee! I never saw myself purchasing a standing desk. I mean, I prefer to be sitting while I take my feedback, good or bad, just in case I faint, but Flexispot have changed my mind. Now I write loads of my reviews standing and even have the backbone to be checking comments in an upright position. As you can see from Seffi's dutiful assessment and incessant backseating, the desk is very easy to put together. I did it all by myself, which is a fairly massive achievement for me, with simple and very easy to use instructions. Once it's together, whack it into a socket and enjoy. The desk is incredible quality. I mean, check out that little wriggle of approval there. From the 25th to the 28th of November, Flexispot will be holding their biggest sale of the year, the Black Friday sale. Check the link in my description or in the pinned comment to see that for yourself. Furthermore, join the E8 pre-order event and you will receive an exclusive discount code for £130 off an E8 from the 11th of November through to the 24th of November. Go to flexispot.co.uk/E8-pre-order to snag yourself one of these. Thank you Nico and the team at Flexispot for sending me this little beauty, and now back to the video. Some of you might be thinking that this is going to be a malicious video where I rip this TV series to shreds in an almost sadistic glee, and while the red mist does descend from time to time, don't get me wrong about this. When I saw the trajectory this show was taking, I was so disappointed that I felt genuinely sad, pouty even. The Boys was a breath of fresh air for me. After a decade of Marvel, it was a welcome shift to see the formula tipped on its head, and the potential realities of a modern day superhero brought to light and fucked around with for a few hours. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind Marvel. Marvel is okay viewing. A lot of my friends are huge fans of the series and have watched and enjoyed some of the films. I cried at Avengers Endgame, like more than once. Who didn't? But when it comes to Marvel, honestly, I'm not really a fan. Besides the occasional, like, Christmas Day viewing of Iron Man 2 with my cousins, or an impromptu cinema trip to see Black Widow or whichever Thor movie it was that I watched, or Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I mean, I did really enjoy Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but I just never took to the universe itself. Like, I'm just not really a fan. In the literal sense of being fanatical. Like, it's alright, you know. But as with what starts to happen when we're kind of fed something over and over again, and it's only something that we're kind of vaguely alright with, and I got dragged to more and more cinema viewings and more movie nights and whatnot, I just started to develop this really reluctant Marvel fatigue. The films are just mindless, brainless fun, which is okay in drips and drabs, but after a while, after like all these awkward jokes that evaporate any even remotely tense moment, all the one-liners that just get injected into the movies and TV series they made, specifically with the intention of having them be used as screenshots and as reaction pictures on Twitter for free marketing. All the, well, that happened comments, I was just bored of it, you know? Yeah, he is Groot. Nice one. Can we have something kind of interesting happen now? So, when The Boys began to crop up in popularity, memes appearing everywhere, Homelander specifically just dominating those Sigma male meme pages, I just kind of wasn't really that interested. Great, more spandex wearing superheroes, I thought. I wondered whether they're going to make a grown man sit in front of a TV, play a game of totally not sponsored Fortnite and shout, "Screw you, noob hunter," like that time they made Thor do it in Avengers Endgame or Infinity War or whichever one it is, and it was horrendously cringe.
Noob Master, hey, it's Thor again. I'm gonna fly over to your house, come down to that basement you're hiding in, rip off your arms and shove them up your butt!
But at a barbecue I was sick at a few months back, my friend Ryan described to me a scene with a man who climbs into another man's penis, sneezes, and pops him from the inside. I thought, no, I have to see what the fuss is about because that is not Marvel. A penis, I thought, coyly twirling my hair on my finger. On my television? Surely not. Surely so. And so I gave the boys a shot and fell into a deep love so passionate and intense that I went off the radar for 2 weeks. It's fantastic. Centering around a little bloke called Huey whose girlfriend is accidentally killed, and I mean obliterated, by a member of the Seven, this universe's hilariously schlocky translation of the Avengers, we watch him try and take some legal action, or even extract a basic apology out of his girlfriend's accidental but totally arseholish killer, A-Train. Except this is grounded hero fiction. Heroes are big money, and more importantly, they're owned by Vought, a company which I believe is a parody of Disney, or several companies, Disney being the main one? I'm unsure. Either way, Huey's attempts to seek any kind of acknowledgement from the heavily corporate, lawyered up, completely emotionless, and sympathy-devoid Vought Corporation is fruitless, until Billy Butcher, Carl Urban, appears on the scene and offers him a much more violent route to vigilante justice. Putting just this normal dude, and massive nerd at that, right into the seat of our main character puts us on this immediate even ground with our protagonist. More so than any Marvel show I think has ever adequately done, at least of the ones that I've seen. We're not superheroes, we're just normal men. Innocent men. And especially for normal men that are fans of superheroes. Huey's disillusionment with the people he used to idolize is a really real thing. We feel for him. Through Huey's eyes, we see right through the facade of heroism displayed by the Seven. And with him, we also want to rip them apart from within. The satire of our current media conglomerates, the corporate ownership of image and personhood, and the unpacking of long-tired superhero tropes was next to none for me. Watching the writers of the show put together a pack of utter bastards, these heartless, deeply damaged, and dangerous individuals dressing up in silly fancy dress and posing for photo ops instead of actually fighting crime, using performance-enhancing drugs to maintain their prestige, and using their dangerous reputations to exploit others for sex or what have you, well, it was the unpacking of a genre I didn't realise I wanted. And at the centre of it all, the cherry on top, the utterly masterfully written and perfectly portrayed Homelander. For those of you that haven't seen the show, he's the guy in all of the memes. Anthony Starr perfectly demonstrates the tightrope our planet would be unknowingly walking on if you took Superman, raised him in a lab, and demonstrated no love nor affection to him while you raised him. Truly a battery-farmed hero. The world is quite literally in the hands of a volatile and spoiled man-child with an unpredictable and extremely dangerous temper and some apocalyptic mummy issues, and it's fantastic. Kept on a tenuous, fragile leash, there only ever seems to be one thing separating Homelander from getting bored of having all of these people here bothering him and murdering everybody on the planet, besides potentially a few people he'd keep around and eternally torment. Because A, he's definitely that kind of guy, and B, his whole thing is how much he needs to be adored, and you can't very well have that when you're the last person alive. Everything about this character has been carefully crafted to produce a creature of pure terror. I don't know what their makeup strategy was with this man, but I am convinced they took a single tone golden concealer and just wiped it all over his face. No contour, so under the lights of the set he's got this sickly yellow appearance that just seems inhuman. With his extremely piercing eyes and his coincidentally predator-like sharp canines, they've made Mr. Starr look like some kind of eerie lizard, and I love it. The story of the first season isn't perfect, but I mean, which story ever is? There is a massive reliance on rape and sexual assault to traumatize the female characters and give the male characters some motivation and a reason to take action. I think most of our female main characters, and at least one male main character, is either explicitly raped in the show, or sexually assaulted, or implied to have been in the past, in some way or another during season 1. After a while it started to feel a bit irritating. Like, the first instance that I will kind of briefly discuss later in the video was so horrifying that when I was watching it, I was almost in tears. I felt sick, like it was very deeply uncomfortable. And you don't even see it on screen, but you see the situation that the character is in, and you know the powers that are kind of being exerted on her, and her lack of agency in that scene, and how she's kind of forced into the situation. Like, you feel really bad for her. But as time went on and the show kind of built up over the series, eventually it just started to get to the point where I was like, oh, more rape. Oh, okay. And you know, I'd start to roll my eyes, which I doubt is the response the writers wanted from their kind of edgy stories. But that major criticism aside, the story is a fantastic deconstruction of the corporatization of heroism and the realities of the rich and famous abiding by a completely different set of rules, which is Despite what the length of this video is going to be about, how the show eventually become this tragic self-parody, I heartily recommend you watch the first season of this show for yourself. It is brilliant. Depending on whether or not season 4 ever pulls it back and delivers what was a very initially piercing satire and fantastically paced and brilliantly balanced story, I could potentially recommend seasons 2 and 3, but specifically with the intention of just kind of wading through them and getting through to the light at the end of the tunnel that could potentially be season 4. But otherwise, I wouldn't push past the quagmire. You see, I am firmly of the belief that this show should have ended back in season 2, and today I will be telling you why. And since a chronological retelling with a breakdown of every single issue I have with this TV show would make this video around 1,000 years too long, we're going to instead do a quickfire recollection of the events of the first season, and then I'll be dropping a big fat numbered list right on your plates, and we'll talk about all the issues in no particular order that I found impacted the trajectory of the quality of the boys. Before I begin, if you liked the video, please remember to like and comment and subscribe to the channel for more content. I mainly cover video games, although as you can see, I'm branching out here and there, so if you like media discussion, this is the place for you. Furthermore, check out my Patreon below. Patrons get early access to most of my content, plus access to my 5-minute review series where I take games I can't turn into proper full-length videos and talk about them for 5 minutes. These go live every Tuesday at 4 PM UK time, with a few bonus reviews per month that you can see even if you're not a patron, so feel free to check those out in the link below. This month of October we covered Grease, Outlast, Stray, Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, and The Last of Us. Next month there will be more, and the schedules are posted publicly. Anyway, like I said, full spoilers ahead for the boys. Let's get to work. So, time to catch up. For the next couple minutes, I'm gonna run through season 1 as fast as I can, and quickfire explain all of the basis for the plot of this show. If you are on the fence about watching the boys, at least go and watch season 1 now. I implore you, go and watch season 1. It is really good, and I don't want to spoil it, and it is honestly gold standard television. Okay, ready? Nice, let's get started. We follow Huey, electronics extraordinaire who sells TV stuff and lives with his dad, played by the beloved Simon Pegg. He's the classic wimp, too scared to ask for a raise from his scary boss, whose girlfriend Robin spends about 3 minutes on set before she's unceremoniously turned into a cloud of blood and cartilage. She's been run through, not in a sexy way, but in a hurt way, by a superhero called A-Train, a man who runs really fast, and wears a really cringe outfit. Huey takes it badly. He's traumatized, as you can expect, but the kind of bitter trauma of resentment that you feel when you've been done wrong and you are helplessly stood at the base of a mountain of legal issues and jargon and shit that you could never overcome, you against the world. Like trying to get a paycheck your boss is refusing to give you, like trying to report a co-worker who grabbed your ass in the break room, like trying to cancel a fucking contract with Virgin Media. We all know what it feels like looking up into the eyes of a corporation and knowing we're going to have to jump through 1,000 hoops, try every trick in the book, deliver triple the evidence you could ever be expected to reasonably own, contact every board in union, spend months and years fighting for your basic human acknowledgements, and just hope that they underestimate you enough that they don't bother to get a good lawyer. Huey is offered $45,000 with the promise of his silence, and he asks to think on it. Here, we're introduced to a woman with no regards for architecture, Starlight, who is applying to be a superhero in the Seven with the assistance of her very overbearing pageant mum. Her power involves sucking up all the nearby electricity and blasting it out of her hands. Very cool, Starlight. Now do a flip. Starlight is accepted into the Seven and brought out onto stage with her new bestie, the Deep. They don't stay besties for long, however. The second they have a moment alone on their tour, he tells her that he'll have her kicked out of the Seven if she doesn't suck him off. Her entire future on the line, alone and isolated in a location she doesn't know, without her support system, no idea of the consequences of what Homelander will do when the Deep tells him that Starlight attacked him, Starlight gives in. Ouch. I feel for you. This one really bothered me for a long time. I was not right for a few episodes. This was hard to watch. Starlight receives no sympathy from Maeve, her new co-worker who just tells her to clean herself up and never be seen crying, and her first day on the job is a raging shit stain. Thanks, the Deep. After a small panic attack in the corner shop, Huey is approached by a fellow called Billy Butcher, one of the most British, swaggery, vigilante, stellar and string vest blokes in all of TV. Billy says he knows what happened to Robin and he offers to help. Huey is initially disinterested but comes around and off they go. They devise a plan whereby Huey heads into Vought to pretend to take the deal and plant a bug. Starlight is sitting on a bench being gutted about being sexually assaulted on her first day in her dream job when she encounters Huey. They have a bit of an awkward back and forth, but long story short, this is a budding romance, like Romeo and Juliet but appropriately aged. Huey heads to Vought to plant his bug, but he is noticed by Translucent, a member of the Seven who can turn invisible but needs to be naked to do so, who follows Huey back and beats the shit out of him. He and Billy incapacitate and cage him. Long story short, but Huey and Billy employ the help of their friend Frenchie, a genius who specializes in dispatching the typically invincible superheroes, and together, faced with the looming threat of Homelander flying around, knowing he'll turn them into soup on a whim, they ram a bomb up Translucent's arse and detonate it.
Big lump of C4, peck right up his fudger. Boom, claret everywhere.
With Translucent dead, the team enlist MM, or as he is for whatever reason known, Mother's Milk, some massive buff bloke with a heart of gold, to scope out A-Train. They discover A-Train is using a mysterious compound called Compound V as a performance-enhancing drug, the existence of which is a huge secret that for some reason would destroy Vought, but no one knows why. Following the trail, they find a hideout containing an imprisoned Japanese woman. We'll call her Kimiko. I mean, we'll call her that because it's her name, and they break her out. But she can't speak and she's basically feral. She's been injected with Compound V and turned into a soup as an adult, which is very unheard of. In the meantime, Homelander and Maeve let an entire aeroplane of people die because it's a lot of effort to save them. Uh-oh. The team find Compound V, which is discovered to have been used on infants to turn them into soups. Despite the narrative surrounding superheroes, they're not born super, they're made. This is obviously a huge betrayal to many of them who now realize their parents specifically sought this out for the sake of their children's personal fame, changing their lives forever, including Noir, Precious Boy, who takes it really badly. Starlight combines forces with Huey and the boys with the intention of helping them dismantle the corrupt Vought Corporation and their puppet soups from the inside. Starlight's sexual assault comes to light and the Deep is sent to be a hero in Ohio, where he is sexually assaulted by a fangirl. Ding on the sexual assault meter. In the meantime, we learn that Billy hates the soups because Homelander raped his wife. Another ding on the sexual assault counter, and his wife subsequently disappeared. We find out that Homelander impregnated her, and although we're told she died in childbirth, we find her very much alive with a young son called Ryan, that she had essentially had to enlist into some kind of witness protection program in order to keep safe from Homelander. Oh dear. When Homelander finds out, he goes to the home of his weird mummy stand-in and kills her, and thus the one person whose opinion he actually seemed to care about is now dead by his hand, and there's no one on the planet who can keep him tethered anymore. He also finds out about a plot against him, including Starlight's involvement. The boys are shoved into hiding, including poor Simon Pegg, who is sent off and isn't heard from again, besides the occasional Skype call, so presumably he had some filming requirements elsewhere or wanted to work from home for a bit. Starlight is kept on a tighter leash than ever, now alone and under Homelander's furious thumb, a hostage in her own house. So, in short, what works about the series? Number one, it really is us against the world. The Boys perfectly portrays a world saturated with just vapid media obsession, where the big companies have all of the power and call all of the shots. A big star accidentally and horribly kills your girlfriend? No, he didn't. Fuck you. And fuck off. And if you try and bring this up again, we'll sue you. I mean, when you think about it, the only fictional part of the world they're living in is the superheroes themselves. Everything else is just kind of cynically spot on, hence the satire.
There's a supervillain on your school campus. You hear the calls of distress, you witness a violent display of superpowers. I'm Sheriff Ed Flanagan, and I'm here with Homelander to talk about school safety.
But to stay alive in the moment, remember, stay calm and follow the law.
Vought will not be admitting culpability and will not be apologising, but they do offer their condolences and a free season pass to the Seven's theme park and a complimentary slushie from an on-site establishment of your choice with the purchase of a full adult meal. Huey wants basic human decency and respect, that's it, and the in-universe stand-in for the likes of Marvel and Sony, where the friendly and cool act they put on is just an act, a picnic blanket draped over a tentacled mess of legal action and aggressive IP protection. Despite Huey's justified outrage and completely valid needs for acknowledgement, these companies have too much money to play by the same rules as him and deal with his issues, no matter whether or not they are the direct cause of those issues, revving up the audience to care even more. We are immediately on his side, we are motivated alongside him, and we want him to succeed, but we're also interested enough in what the soups are doing that we want to see Homelander use his laser eyes and Black Noir stand eerily in elevators. Both sides are sympathetic, but one side is truly empathetic. That's good writing. Number two, 2. The satire is spot on, but the story is still solid without it. The inner machinations of the Vault Company are as caricature as they can get. We've got these smug suits in it for profit who buy superheroes and use them as glorified mascots. Sure, the superheroes get a good deal too, but ultimately this business arrangement is at the expense of the people who need to be saved in the first place. Vault is obsessed with ratings, who scores what with which demographic. Ashley, the PR manager, played by the effervescent Colby Minifie, introduces Homelander to a potential new member of the team called Blindspot, a blind hero whose powers allow him to basically see everything around him, somehow. Ashley remarks with excitement, a differently abled member of the Seven. Inclusion's a big priority to millennials. Then we find an ethnic female and we're golden. Homelander pops Blindspot's eardrums, which is so hilariously rude, saying, "What made you think I'd allow a cripple into the Seven? Okay man, say how you really feel." His hilariously fragile superiority complex is almost as laughable as Blindspot's deliberate tokenism. Vought knows it, the writers know it, we know it. We can't really begin to make ourselves vouch for Blindspot due to his entirely two-dimensional introduction. He is there to tick a box, which just kind of makes his inclusion cynical and also quite funny. From watching Homelander kind of laughingly shrug off a crashing plane, to hearing the PR people obsessively fawn over who has the most points with Midwesterners, and men between the ages of 17 and 21, and people who own cats but also one day would maybe also like to own a dog. It's a hilarious insight into like the modern day realities of a Marvel hero, you know, all flash, no fury. There is no time to be saving lives when you could just be signing shirts. But with a rich set of characters, all with their own solid justifications for what they're doing. Some deeply flawed, but also kind of relatable and understandable villains. And a story that grows and builds and twists and turns, both organically and really stunningly. This is a story that stands on its own just without the satire. If not sympathetic, everybody is at least interesting. There's no one on screen that you're like unhappy to see. Everyone feels like they're being used to their fullest potential. It's good shit. Number 3. Every character is compelling in their own way. With the boys, even with characters we don't like, they're so interestingly written that we want to see what happens with them. I wanted to see how Madeline would keep Homelander in check. When Huey detonates the bomb in Translucent's arse and paints the wall with him, I was psyched. It was a moment of self-preservation made manifest. Butcher is a loose cannon, and although he himself isn't too sympathetic, he is at the centre of an enormous mystery surrounding Vought, and consequently it's of great interest to him and us to unwrap said mystery. Frenchie's cool but a bit simpy, and MM, my favourite, his real name's Marvin, is trying to balance being a loving and present father with smacking soups. The Seven might be caricatures of their own respective hero archetypes, but they're still deeply relatable in their own way. Homelander is a lab-bred sociopath who wants to be loved, but having long since completely devalued human life through years of murder, sees no one as an equal enough to deserve his respect and build real bonds, and so forces his own miserable wheel to turn. Maeve is our Wonder Woman character. Hilariously, she is super strong and invincible, but so are all of the other members of the Seven, except they're super strong, invincible, and all have their own powers. Maeve, despite apparently being super, is often as helpless as a normal person when surrounded by these people, and has adjusted accordingly, becoming a bitter misogynist who maintains the status quo. She's also an alcoholic. The Deep, our stand-in for Aquaman, is completely pathetic, both as a man and a hero, and takes his feelings of inadequacy out on women by, well, you know. He knows he's only useful in the sea, and he knows he's no fan favourite. He knows he's weak and sidelined, and he's deeply insecure. As his situation gets worse and worse, even after his assault, even I started to feel bad for him. I feel like that's good writing. A-Train is the Flash, and as deadly as Ezra Miller, if not a bit better adjusted, the fastest man on the planet, but in a world of superheroes, some of which are also extremely fast, A-Train has to rely on performance-enhancing drugs, Compound V, to stay ahead, lest he lose his position as the world's fastest man and his place in the Seven. He also dates a woman called Popclaw, a D-class superhero who he is genuinely ashamed to be associated with. He uses Compound V to make her overdose. Poor Poppy. And then we've got Black Noir. He's great. I have nothing to add. Number 4. Seth Rogen's in it. I love that guy. Number 5. Homelander. You see, the reason I think Homelander works so well in season 1 is because he's not ever entirely aware of what's going on exactly. Homelander is this absurdly dangerous man who will just simply kill anybody that he doesn't like. He's spent so much time murdering people that he has no concept of the value of human life anymore. If someone bothers him, he'll just kill them in cold blood. And he's often fairly content to let many people die. He doesn't care, you know, that's what makes him so dangerous. I think he works well because, like I said, he's not entirely aware of the plot against him. So he's no active and immediate danger to the main cast. Sure, you know, he's constantly orbiting the team, and one wrong step and he will become an active and immediate danger who will obliterate them on the spot. But, you know, he's not actively pursuing them, crouching at their door like a cat waiting to pounce. He's more just kind of on the peripheral, but still a very dangerous man to be messing with. He's so performative and so willing to play a part that you and everyone in the show can see how flimsy a part it is that he's playing. Homelander engages with this theatre because it suits him. There's no other reason nor interest in playing the part he plays. The people around him simultaneously mean nothing and everything to him. He will extinguish life at the drop of a hat, but he is addicted to being loved. He doesn't even go by his everyday name, John. He's Homelander. He doesn't drink or smoke or do drugs. He sees himself as this vessel for the protection of Earth, or more importantly, America. But he doesn't understand Earth and they don't understand him, which makes him very angry. Combining that frustration to be understood with the flagrant lack of regard for human life earns us the perfect combination of instability. Consequently, the writers have free rein to have Homelander kill as brutally and immediately as he wants. He'll walk onto the stage and laserize a man to mush. He kills children. His immediate danger is presented very clearly to us so many times. We know that the moment Homelander finds out who is responsible for what's going on, they are dead. And number 6, most importantly, in my opinion, Homelander and Ryan. It's a long story and this bleeds over into season 2 and 3, but Ryan is Homelander's son, and Ryan is initially kept away from Homelander by his mum and the Vault Corporation, who do not want him to know who his father is. Ryan doesn't himself know that he is superpowered. He just likes Lego and maths. When Homelander meets Ryan, their meeting is initially very unsuccessful. Homelander doesn't have the patience nor gentility to understand what Ryan needs first and foremost, a father, same as Homelander has always needed, and ends up trying to push him much further than he's comfortable going. He thinks that if he throws Ryan from the nest like a tiny baby bird, he will intuitively know what to do. When one such push accidentally hurts Ryan and Ryan lashes out, telling Homelander to leave him alone, I was worried that we wouldn't see Ryan again for a while. But they reconcile and Homelander begins to learn to be the father that Ryan needs, at least on the absolute most surface level at first, and deepening later as Homelander also develops as a character. Their relationship is easily the best part of season 3, and the most dangerous part of the show as a whole. When given the right love and guidance, no matter what place that comes from, Ryan opens up and starts to learn how to use his powers, much to the pride of his newfound father. Homelander and Ryan are the classic case of the bond between father and son. His dad is an irredeemable piece of shit. I truly do not think that a Homelander can be redeemed as a person. He will probably die horribly, and it will probably be by Ryan's hands. I can't wait, honestly, but he's Ryan's dad, and their bond does seem genuine for what it's worth. Too bad it's absolute poison. Still, they were my favourite part of season 3, and hands down the best on-screen relationship in the show. I would watch a day in the life movie featuring these two all day, every day. So the longer the team can keep Homelander and his little blonde spawn at bay, the better, but he is inevitable. Wow, you're still here? Right, well, time to talk about how this TV series shit its pants, and it's numbered list time. So, number 1, Huey and Billy have just completely run their course as main characters. As season 1 drew to a close, the characters were shoved into hiding. We meet them in season 2, where they've been hiding for a while. Their names and faces are on TV, with a reward for any tips regarding their location. Huey's come a long way since the start of season 1, and he's finally starting to show the initiative of a leader. He suggests they find Compound V and release it to the public, so that everybody knows that soups are made, not born, and use it to burn Vought to the ground. And when Billy comes back an episode later, this leadership is immediately at odds. They're both leaders, interesting overlap, like yin and yang, except really annoying. Billy and Huey punch each other a few times over the course of the season, and Billy refuses to congratulate Huey on any of his successful plays, for instance getting the aforementioned Compound V out there into the public eye and exposing the Vol Corporation. This rivalry makes for a fairly interesting point of contention until it's completely dropped, at which point the pair begin to awkwardly orbit each other like twin moons. And this is around the time where Billy as a character really starts to stagnate. Billy was extremely funny until season 3, and then he became so one-note that he was irritating. His typical template of walking into a room, swaggering around and dipping his shoulders and smirking at people and being a bit rude became the only thing he did, except before he used it to get stuff done. Now he uses it to act as a barrier towards progress. He withholds information, he doesn't collaborate, he hides away and acts avoidantly, which isn't really how he's ever behaved. Yeah, you know, he's fairly proactive in some of his plot lines, but his avoidance in the others serves more of a way to drag the story out, not build any tension, so it falls flat and then some. Every conversation he had was a hushed spat ending in a threat, an agreement, or a promise, or all three. But like ripping a plaster off over and over again, it just lost its stick. Billy was no longer really that relevant to the plot besides to withhold information from others for a long time, dragging plot points out for several episodes instead of being honest and dealing with something easily resolvable, or to source a new Compound V, Compound V24, which anybody could have reasonably done, or to call people cunts. His wife is killed at the end of season 2, and after he rejects Ryan for some reason that isn't really that well justified, Ryan goes off to be with Homelander, so Billy's role has now dried up. Yeah, I can see where they want to go with him, but they're clearly dragging it out to be done in some future season. Which means that right now, he's just floating in the abyss in some of the most blandest writing you'll ever experience. So to keep him relevant, in season 3, around episode 6, the show suddenly invents a brother that Billy had that Huey now suddenly reminds him of, and we're suddenly forced to watch all these flashbacks with this random brother character, and whenever he and Huey argue, he looks over and sees his brother. Sometimes he even murmurs something about how similar the two of them are, but it's so out of left field and it's so uninteresting that they've dredged up some manufactured trauma to suddenly affect Billy when it's never affected him before. We see Billy's abusive dad, and we see how his abusive dad taught him that he could only solve problems with violence, but we see this in like one single episode, so it comes off very rushed. And the payoff is in the same episode. Nothing to do all season, and then it's paid off within 60 minutes. I'm gonna mention this point a lot, so brace yourself. But leading into seasons 2 and 3, so many story beats, so many twists, so many genuine writing developments happen so fast and so immediately after hours of character stagnation that even if they were planned to do that from the start, they are done so quickly that they just feel they're done at random by the writers to keep things fresh. This happens a lot with Billy. We hear mention of him having a brother at some point in the series when he meets his dad, and there's kind of an implication that he and his dad don't get along, but it's never really kind of built upon at all. And then one day, towards the end of season 3, he suddenly has a brother who committed suicide, and he is deeply traumatized by this, and has been his whole life or something, but we never really knew this at all. This could have been planned really well from the beginning and paced so well throughout the seasons, and yet it still feels like a random interjection of twist. The pacing is all over the place with this. Over on Huey's end, also suffering from severe character stagnation, he randomly develops an insecurity complex about his super girlfriend, Starlight. With Robin long since abandoned by the story, Huey decides that he is insecure that his girlfriend is stronger than him, and he is scared that he won't be able to protect her, despite her quite literally being bulletproof. Starlight even says to him, "On our first date, you promised this didn't bother you. Where has this come from?" As though it addresses it, but it more just serves to highlight it. Huey spends season 1 becoming stronger and more confident in himself. He thrives, he becomes a leader, but now he and Billy play exactly the same roles, so oh shit, time to make Huey super insecure. Perfect. Starlight delivers this hilariously stoic line entirely played straight, saying,
"I thought the drugs had fucked you up, Huey, but this is you."
referring to the Compound V24 that Huey has been trying to take to keep up with her, but like, it could be drugs. It affects the brain. What do you mean? I mean, it doesn't matter either way. This is a very pointless bit of conflict that gets resolved quite seamlessly. Like, they were just hangry and felt better after a snack and a little nap. But I do love the idea that they dropped this line to suggest that this is out of character for Huey, and then dismiss the idea that it might be like major brain deterioration as a result of the literal drugs he's taking. Like the effects of compound V24 or some kind of metaphor for CTE or something. Huey gets over it, Billy gets over it, and overall the scenes don't really achieve anything. The characters aren't any different at the end of these arcs. They just have them and then they don't have them anymore. My take on this? I think one of them should have died around the end of season 1 or at some point during season 2. Because they're somehow both just vestigial limbs hanging off the body of this television series. You know, at least then the brother comparison might hold some water. Number 2, the 7 are kind of really underutilized in the story. Let's be real, Maeve has not had a thing to do since she told Starlight to get over herself in season 1. The hilarity of making every superhero super strong and invincible to damage, and then making it Maeve's power when everyone gets genuine powers, means she ends up being less useful than Ryan, particularly since she's very physically strong in episode 1, but it's the only time we ever see her do anything, so we have no demonstration of this strength whatsoever throughout the entire show. Everybody keeps talking about how strong she is while she's sat there in a tacky wig crying about her life. Like, hit somebody, Maeve, I want to see what happens. There's a lot of narrative potential with Maeve. She's bisexual, having had a girlfriend called Elena, but also having engaged in a relationship with Homelander, and from what we can gather, Homelander was extremely abusive. He's controlling, he kills people that show an interest in Maeve, one of the reasons why Maeve now ignores Elena, who she still actually has feelings for, and Homelander keeps Maeve locked in the tower like Rapunzel, except with the worst wig you've ever seen. Homelander outs Maeve without her consent on live TV, now giving Vought another thing about her to package and sell and own, immediately putting her in a film with a female love interest with a cropped fringe, a leather vest, and a lot of rings. Her sexuality is a commodity to them, even Elena now having to dress more masculine, as the PR crew at Vought comment, "Feminine relationships are too sexy, this isn't Penthouse." There's a lot the writers could do with Maeve, but instead she just spends so much time sitting around, crying, drinking, refusing to be vulnerable with people, refusing to be honest, and then eventually just being good later on. At first, with Maeve and Homelander, they had this kind of like flirty back and forth, but she was a little bit insecure about the fact that he is obviously more prized than her in the eyes of the community. He gets all the spotlight, she's shunted to the side. I think that's a really good metaphor for their powers as well. Homelander essentially has every power that Maeve has, except hers are a lot more honed. She only has a couple powers, which are invincibility and super strength, so she's mastered them, whereas Homelander has lots of powers that he has a very sort of general affinity with. He's more of a generalist, she's a specialist. But despite her mastery of this, Homelander completely overshadows her in almost every single way. And you can see at the start of season 1 that she has a lot of insecurities like that, but she's also somebody that he can trust, and yeah, you know, she secretly doesn't like him, and she's kind of scared of him, but she's the only one who can get through to him. They have a very strange relationship between them, and that's kind of dropped in season 2 and 3. After a while, she just starts to be the kind of miserable side character that just deflects questions and conversation. She just becomes fucking unbearable, whereas in the first season, she's actually really promising. I don't blame the actress either. I imagine she is doing the best with what she's been given, but God alive. There's one scene in season 3 where Maeve gets captured and locked in a cell underneath Vought Tower, and she goes, "Why are you letting me live?" to Homelander, and I was like, yeah, honestly, good question. Like, why are you letting her live? The writers could have very easily killed Maeve off earlier in the show, to zero narrative consequence. It might have even made the stakes a little bit higher if one of the main cast had actually died. And if she had died back when she was in character as Homelander's confidant and closest friend within the 7, and somebody he kind of had this flirty back and forth with, and then he killed her, that could have actually been really scary, this idea that he would have killed anybody around him with the slightest sense of betrayal. It probably would have put Starlight in a lot more danger as well. Homelander could have killed her. Maybe he'd seem a bit more dangerous then. Homelander tells Maeve that he's keeping her alive because he's going to harvest her eggs, and she gives him this look that completely mirrored my own. They're not like real eggs, Homelander. You could have done it at any time. They don't go off. You don't have to keep them in the fridge. It's like a supervillain speech where they drag a scene out by telling somebody their evil plan. It's so corny. Maeve Maeve goes, "This is still a top 3 day in my life because today is the day I saw you scared." What a bucket of cringe, Maeve. Maybe reassess your top 10 and come back to me. Her scenes are so dreary and irritating. We only ever see her do anything heroish once. Her time working on the film with Starlight is cool, but ultimately she does a fucking load of nothing. Her sacrifice at the end of season 3 comes across trite as well, but we'll get there, believe me. Like, this poor actress came along every day and acted her heart out for no discernible reason. Her storyline was well intentioned but completely dry, and actually quite annoying to watch. You may as well skip through all her scenes until the final few episodes of season 3 when she suddenly starts to do things. You're annoying, Maeve. A-Train has a very impressive start in the first season, but his character development doesn't even begin until halfway through season 3, and then this happens all of a sudden in the space of about 2 episodes. Again, the pacing is wild. We have nothing but consistent arseholeness until they decide to do a story arc about racism, and then he's wheeled out and given a bit of character development. His brother is paralysed by an All Lives Matter virgin called Blue Hawk.
You know, it's actually racist to call somebody racist.
A-Train kills him, A-Train gets Blue Hawk's heart implanted into him, A-Train becomes a little bit more compassionate in one specific situation, and then it's basically dropped by the story. Same for Black Noir, my favourite character, who only began to see ham-fisted characterisation when they were setting him up to get killed. I did say spoilers, by the way, right? Yeah? God, I hope I did. Basically, Black Noir's actor is so fucking talented, I love him. Nathan Mitchell knows exactly how to characterise Noir, who canonically does not speak, ever, and therefore needs to be characterised through his mannerisms, which Mitchell does absurdly well. You can tell so much about the person that Noir is by the way that he acts, and he is adorable, but he's also very scary. But, and I say it again folks, the pacing's trash. About 2 episodes before the end of season 3, Black Noir's entire life story is suddenly delivered to us by a bunch of on-screen cartoon animals. Why could they be wanting to characterise him so thoroughly and so endearingly all of a sudden just before the end of season 3? A lifetime of context was shoved down our throats, and then he's dead a moment later, and it was so ham-fisted that you'd see it coming a mile off. Less is more with Noir, and Mitchell knows it for sure. The scene where he's reaching for his helmet, having had his face melted off and his head half caved in, hits 1,000 times harder than the stupid little play his cartoon friends put on. All that raw emotion and sadness and vulnerability, and this almost childlike desperation, the shock he's in, God, it's hard to look at. It's really cheap when juxtaposed with the typically subtle brilliance of Nathan Mitchell's acting to suddenly cram a story down our throats and kill him less than 2 hours later. He's our side character, goddammit. He's Black Noir and he deserves so much better. But we'll cover this later too because the stakes are never quite so high. Ironically, the character I thought that had the best characterization was the Deep. He is a pathetic pile of shit who degrades women because he's insecure about himself and his place within the Seven. He sees himself as the diversity hire. I despised him after his sleazy introduction. I actively wished that he would be killed off, and very quickly. When the Deep gets sent to Ohio Purgatory, he joins a cult, makes peace with his body, gets some actual final, albeit weird support, gets married to a woman who is using him for power. He seems like he's on the up and up, maybe he'll change, maybe he'll develop, learn, grow, but when he's finally allowed to go back into the Seven, returning to New York with the others, he goes right back to selling people out and sucking Homelander's dick. It is a hilarious cycle of misery with him, and I loved every second of it. Number 3. Kimiko is a bit character with a title role. Kimiko is the character we met back in season 1. Japanese and entirely non-verbal, Kimiko's ability to communicate is a screaming barrier in the face of the other members of the boys. Kimiko is the kind of character who appeals to weird men who like cat girls. She's more or less adopted by Frenchie, who is utterly enamored with her, and the two of them start out with a friendship that starts to develop but never ever really feels that genuine. Not only does this just completely cripple Frenchie's development, but it also forces us into scenes that are so fucking boring. Kimiko is non-verbal and entirely dependent on Frenchie. They have a special language that only they share, and she relies on him for basically everything. She's volatile and he's earned her trust, but she's dangerous with everybody else, and now she kind of lives in his house and he feeds her. she is a cat. You know the kind of guys out there that like helpless women characters that they can like nurture and look after within their homes, but it's basically like a thinly veiled desire to have what is essentially a fleshlight installed in their home that does the dishes for them and has no male friends and relies entirely on them and can't leave. Frenchie slowly pulls Kimiko out of her shell while being the center of her universe and her sole support in a country she was shipped into against her will, can't work in, can't find anywhere else to live in because she has no money. She's like a mail order bride in a leather jacket. The demographic of weirdos that Kimiko appeals to are definitely the kind of men that chase women at night, not to catch them or hurt them, but just to remind them what fear feels like. So, firstly, Frenchie. Frenchie is introduced to us as a genius who can figure out the weaknesses of superheroes. They're bulletproof? No problem. He uses weaponized Xanax on a hero called Behemoth, whose power is activated by rage, and it chills him out so he can't use his power. Translucent skin cannot be pierced by anything, so Frenchie crams a bomb up his tush and they take him out that way. We were very much introduced to this character as kind of a cerebral member of the team. He's a reluctantly cerebral member. He doesn't like to be used as a gun pointed at things and shot, but he is very clever and he can think his way through many situations. He understands extremely intricate ways of crippling heroes and kind of bringing them down to our level. But instead of seeing any of that take place, he just spends the better part of 3 seasons babysitting Kimiko. It is really boring. The two of them have no on-screen chemistry whatsoever either, and you don't even really get the vibe that she likes him much at all. She's so stiff in the way that she acts towards him. I mean, like, I'm a massive sucker for well-done romance, but something about Frenchie and Kimiko just feels like it fails to click in any meaningful way. And since Kimiko is mute, we rely a lot on her facial expressions and her mannerisms and her shows of emotion to understand how she feels, and she just doesn't really feel that fussed on him. At points, especially in the first 2 seasons, she is straight up hostile. He also tries to kiss her and she pushes him away. She's just not interested whatsoever. Yes, after the death of her brother, but, you know, she takes no comfort in having him near her. By season 3, she likes him, but I mean, she's been in his company for like a year now, canonically, 2 years, so you'd expect some kind of Stockholm Syndrome to have kicked in by then. You know, a warm smile here and there is like the minimum expectation. Kimiko only communicates through a special kind of sign language that she's learned with her brother. Although Frenchie does eventually learn this sign language, none of the other characters do. So sure, you see a scene with Frenchie and Kimiko and it's like 4 minutes of sign language, it's just fine, whatever. The stuff they say is boring, but I don't mind sign language being a method of communication. I mean, I started skipping their scenes after a while. I couldn't bear to sit and watch the whole thing play out, but you know, the conversation was cool, but by God, all she did was bitch about having superpowers. But you see a scene with, say, Starlight and Kimiko, Starlight not knowing Kimiko's sign language, and suddenly these scenes are spent watching Kimiko writing messages down on a phone, passing the phone to Starlight, Starlight reading it in silence, maybe verbalizing a bit of it, Starlight responding aloud, Starlight passing the phone back to Kimiko, who is staring at her with wide open expectant eyes, and repeating the process. These scenes might only last a few minutes, but they feel like they go on for fucking ever. It's slow and often the emotion doesn't really come through. At first it's blessed, but it gets really old so fast. There's a character I'll get to discussing later called Stormfront, but long story short, she's a member of the Seven and she kills Kimiko's brother, who is introduced very quickly and then hurriedly killed off in the next episode. And my theory is that Kimiko was originally supposed to die here, but she was such a fan favourite that they kept her in, and now we have to watch people type very boring messages to each other on the phone instead of anything meaningful happening on screen. As a result, Kimiko's storyline is a fucking mess. She spends a long time hating that she has powers. Another soup kills a mascot in front of a group of children whilst aiming for Kimiko, and the children are traumatized and Kimiko goes on this huge "oh no, we've stolen their childhoods" thing. Then towards the end of season 3 she loses her powers. Within an episode she wants them back again, and then she immediately gets them back. Like I said, pacing. Kimiko spends 2 seasons hating her powers. She loses them in 1 episode, wants them back, and another episode later and she's been injected with the Russian roulette compound V that never actually kills anyone, even though it's apparently a life and death gamble every time you inject it, and she's got all of her powers back again, like that initial removal never happened. It's narrative whiplash, and if drawn out longer and given the time it needed, sure, interesting back and forth, but it's whacked out so fast you would miss it if you went to the toilet. I was gonna say you can reasonably skip this arc and miss nothing, but in all honesty, you can skip every scene the two of them are in and miss nothing of value about the overall viewing experience of the show. Unless you're particularly invested in her like surreal tangent and just constant blithering back and forth. In which case, maybe watch one of those like romance animes where it takes them 20 episodes before they have their first kiss, because things keep getting in the way, or she's shy, or he's awkward. And, you know, maybe you'll have the same experience. Also, anime episodes are 20 minutes, so it'll probably be significantly shorter. And even if it is as boring, it'll still take less of your time. Like, the 7 get so little characterization where it matters. And yet, Kimiko and Frenchie get half a fucking episode each to be boring together. And Starlight and Huey, for that matter too, they're also a nightmare. As if it couldn't get much worse, Kimiko starts to sing, and they have these like musical numbers and these musical scenes in season 3, and they just fucking kill me. I have to skip through them. It's so cringe. I can't watch it. Yeah, you know, that's more of a personal preference, but honestly, who cares? I'm sure the weird The Boys fans have already swarmed the comments section to tell me to fuck off and die, and my home address is likely posted on some forum somewhere, so you know what, I'll just say what I want to say from now on. We'll just get through it together. Frenchie's characterization is relegated to he'll be heartbroken that he missed Herogasm. What a waste.
Frenchie's gonna be heartbroken he missed this.
Number 4, Stormfront and the concept of nuanced writing. So, Stormfront made her debut during the first episode of season 2. She hops into the scene doing an Instagram live session showing the reality of Homelander doing a pro-military advert, pretending to be on base with them, but it's actually being filmed on a set with all of the soldiers just being small actors. We learn immediately, Stormfront has a huge online following. She's very blunt and she's not afraid to offend, but she's also got crazy Zoomer energy.
Bot won't let me have pockets in this thing. You can see every crease in my ass. You can practically see up Starlight's uterus. You want to talk about girl power? Let's talk about getting some pockets.
It's hard to describe, but I quite liked her. Through the first few episodes, we find her to be very clever. She knows exactly how to manipulate public opinion through media. No speeches, just memes, even if they're really low effort. Homelander is immediately unimpressed, but when she shows him how she uses memes to change public opinion so easily, he's really impressed and actually a bit turned on. He's strong, sure, but his public speaking skills are ass, and Stormfront picks up for him when he fails. She's also kind of a massive cow and a huge pick-me. After Starlight's sexual assault goes public, Vought immediately started cramming her into feminist media, having her advertise things in a sexy way, wearing sexy costumes, owning her womanhood even if she wasn't comfortable with it and would have lost her job if she didn't advertise things in sexy clothes. During a Girls Get It Done tour where the media are literally profiting off Starlight's trauma, Stormfront makes this big statement about how it shouldn't matter what's between a soup's legs as long as they do a good job. Shouldn't we all just be competent? Like, you do make a good point, Stormfront, but the reason this is happening is because Starlight was treated differently and abused in the workplace and told to shut up about it because she is a woman and the Deep is a man. It's also how Homelander got away with doing what he did to Billy Butcher's wife. Deep-rooted, systemic sexism. Women soups aren't treated the same. In a vacuum, yeah, definitely, she makes a good point, but in context, it's just straight up bitchy. The problem isn't feminism, it's that feminism is being packaged and sold while nothing is actually being done to fix the issue. It's satire. Like renaming McCree to Cassidy in Overwatch whilst actually doing nothing within the company to fix those issues. It's about making surface level changes with no intention of fixing the underlying issues. My judgments of Stormfront were further cemented when she called her fellow schoolmates, as in like 10-year-old children, dressing up as Disney princesses for Halloween, Disney sluts, and tells Starlight to bite his dick off next time she gets sexually assaulted. So we have a very misogynist victim blamer here. Like, obviously Starlight couldn't bite his dick off, Stormfront. Fuck off. I was really sour towards Stormfront from the beginning, but there was a part of me that hoped Starlight could kind of break through to her. She seemed to be like almost there in terms of being like a respectable human being. You know, she had some good moments. She was very easy to dislike, but in her better moments she was also very easy to like. You know, it's like this love to hate her scenario, a deeply flawed but redeemable character who could maybe change if shown the way. And then we get the twist. Now, if you've read the comics, this isn't a twist. But Stormfront is a Nazi. And not only a Nazi, she is like an 100-year-old Nazi, like a ground zero, born and bred Nazi. But she still looks 30. Oh my god, her actress is 40? I hope I look like her when I'm 40. I hope I look like her when I'm 30, Jesus Christ. But Stormfront is the widow of Frederick Vought, the Nazi scientist who discovered Compound V, experimented on humans with it, and founded the Vought Corporation. And Stormfront's a Nazi too. It's revealed that she used to go by another name, Liberty, and specifically attacked and killed random black men. This whole arc is kind of brushed over. Anyway, the second Stormfront is outed as a Nazi, not that it is wildly left field, considering Stormfront is the name of a major Nazi movement in the States. All of her character's nuance is lost. She has a complete 180 in terms of personality. All the time she spent honing the skills needed to manipulate the media are kind of brushed aside. She's no longer the cool and aloof cynical character that Starlight idolizes. Before, she was a grey area good guy who was not a good guy and really had some issues to work through. But the second you make a character a Nazi, it's no contest. They're a Nazi. Of course the audience doesn't support her, why would they? All the, damn, I love her but I wish she was different goes. It's boring. You write her character off from that moment on, there's nothing redeemable anymore.
People love what I have to say. They believe in it. They just don't like the word Nazi. That's all.
Yeah, she's a Nazi in the comic, but she's also a man in the comic. Stuff can be different. Stormfront basically just becomes Zoomer Hitler, brown hair and brown eyes included. She becomes boilerplate Nazi character, TM, and starts going on speeches about white power and about how immigrants are trying to erase white culture, and pops off some severe racial purity speeches, and speaking German and talking about the Übermensch, and telling Homelander about how Hitler would have loved him. This is such a pivot. Despite being in the comics, and actually if you rewatch season 2, you'll see that her Nazism is foreshadowed in many different ways. But still, with the announcement and the twist, it still somehow feels like a retcon or a rewrite. The change is so severe and immediate that it feels like a random choice made on part of the writers rather than an organically built up twist in a story. I don't even know how that works. I'm not saying Stormfront needs to be a good person. She's clearly a bad person. She's violent, she kills people, she's racist. But all of her characterization at that point just flies out of the window. The master manipulator character is gone. The cynical Zoomer who challenges the status quo and shows the realities of Vought to the modern people. She just became the Nazi. Sure, there's one scene where a guy watches her going on racist rants on a Trump-style podium every day until he shoots a person of colour, assuming he's a super terrorist, but her actual nuance is gone. This was unusual for the show, which usually strives to keep a pretty solid divide in characters. Homelander is crazy weird, but he's still likeable. Every person at Vought is a cunt, but you kind of want to watch and see what happens. I wanted her to get taken down. I was very excited to see her potentially get taken down. And I wanted to see what horrible method she died by. But it was the beginning of a phase of some very two-dimensional writing. In season 1 we had sexual abuser The Deep is so pathetically sad and beaten around and so insecure that although we can't forgive him, we start to feel bad for him. We also get Maeve, the inactive and accepting maintainer of the status quo, who is a miserable alcoholic at best and a frustrating bitch at worst. And then in season 2 we just get, oh yeah, she's a Nazi actually. The show just went from being this quite in-depth character study of so many different people to just being, here are the good guys and here are the bad guys. If I had had an opportunity to rewrite Stormfront, I probably just wouldn't have made her a Nazi. She's implied to have been Liberty. The team find out that she was Liberty. But now she's here under a new guise, in a new costume, trying to make a fresh start, or is she still going to use her position of power to kill people of colour? Like, I feel like if she was just somebody who is revealed to have once been a horrible racist, I mean, she'd still be a bad guy, but her connections at that point to characters like A-Train would have become a lot more interesting, and maybe A-Train could have actually had something to do. Sure, the super terrorists are bad guys, but they also don't get the on-screen effort to characterize them that Stormfront did. They're just kind of played for laughs. Stormfront goes from being insidiously powerful and intriguing to being a blanket Nazi in a transition that was eye-rolling to watch. She's so two-dimensional. She could be just as evil without literally being, like, on the side of the Empire. Number 5. more abandoned storylines. I think the first season of this show began to ask some really interesting questions about the reality of being a modern day soup. We see a support group for people who used to date soups and were subsequently hurt by them, including one poor bloke whose dick was completely frozen off when his superpowered girlfriend came while he was inside her, turning to ice for a second. Billy Butcher constantly reminds Huey that Starlight is a ticking time bomb. There will be one moment when she slips up and accidentally hurts or even kills him. We see a scene where they're having sex, and when she orgasms, her eyes flash, implying that a stronger orgasm, because I mean, it looked very weak, but you know, you go girl, would have caused a reaction enough to blast Huey off her like a toaster spring. I think the grounded questions posed in this first season were really interesting, but they go nowhere. Probably because the writers are scared to kill or injure Huey. Towards the end of season 1 and at the start of season 2, we see the world in disarray over these soup terrorists, who Homelander himself presented with Compound V to create a new evil for the soups to fight, thus making them essential to the military. Kimiko and her brother are also labelled as soup terrorists and hunted, and her brother is murdered by Stormfront under this pretense, but even so, it seems to trickle to nothing. It never really goes anywhere. Most of them just die off screen. All this time they try and set up a supervillain arc, presumably to play satirical on the war on terrorism, but it goes nowhere. Okay, hey, maybe he was intended from the start, but the pacing is so wild that you would just never know. In season 2, we discover Sage Grove, a facility for adults who are incarcerated and treated for mental illnesses that make them dangerous, but is also an experimentation ground for using Compound V on adults. All of the inmates are unstable in one way or another, many of them experiencing fates worse than death, such as one man who can't stop vomiting corrosive acid, very hard to watch, and when the team blow it open and all these inmates escape, nothing happens. Many of them are shown to be out in the world and we never hear about them again, probably to be wheeled out when another bad guy is needed, I guess. Number 6. They woefully fail to flesh out Soldier Boy properly. Man, I love Jensen Ackles. He plays his part in this beautifully. Soldier Boy is basically what Captain America would be like if he was literally exhumed 60 years later and thrust into the world of modern day technology, because he's a massive racist. He's fantastically stoic and proud and lofty as well. You can tell he sucks his own dick all day, but he's also brisk in a way that's really funny. Love him. Soldier Boy is the poster child of what actually happens if you put soups in the military. Nothing. He never actually really served, but everybody claimed he did. Although he claims to have stormed Omaha, it turns out he went there weeks later for a photo opportunity. Having an entire trained army full of normal humans and then one random vigilante guy cleaning up doesn't really work. As we see, a lot of people get killed in the crossfire when the soups aren't properly trained. One of the issues with Soldier Boy is that he's a character the writers spend the first half of season 3 hyping up. The team are searching for him, they're arguing, they're searching for him, they find a lead, they argue, they search for him. Billy is reminded of his little brother, they're searching for him. Oh, Soldier Boy is in a Russian lab. He's been experimented on for ages, they're searching for him but a bit harder now. When the team find a soup, the Crimson Countess, Soldier Boy's old girlfriend, played by Andrea from The Walking Dead, oh my god, I love you, I hope you're doing alright, we find out that Soldier Boy's old team were terrified of him. They hated him. He sounds like Satan himself, like an abusive freak they were trapped with. She's terrified even at the sound of his name. I was intrigued to see him, expecting the worst person in the world. We meet him and, dunno, he's a bit quiet, he's a bit rude, a bit sarcastic even, a bit demanding. He loves gilfs. The team encounter him and said gilfs, engaging in a way I can only describe as enthusiastically consenting. I can respect that. It's nice to see a bit of consent in this show. The only time we see evidence of him being a massive arsehole is in a recreation of one scene as performed by Black Noir's little cartoon character buddies. Soldier Boy's team turn on him and try to kill him, so he beats the shit out of Noir, horribly burning his face and even knocking out a chunk of his brain, but I mean, they did also try to kill him, eventually sending him to the Russians to be horribly experimented on for 50 years. All in all, we only see Soldier Boy for the first time at the end of episode 5, season 3. There are 8 episodes in season 3, so he only has 3 full episodes to show us what a dickhead he is and how much stronger he is than Homelander, and the writing just falls short, which is again presumably a pacing issue. Soldier Boy is dangerous, sure, but not really in a way that's his fault. Soldier Boy has PTSD, which for him manifests as a huge nuclear explosion that obliterates anything in its path, killing loads of people. But it's by accident, and it triggers whenever he hears Russian music or somebody speaking Russian. He has what looks like this very gruff panic attack and then just explodes. The team keep him docile with truckloads of weed, but he can't really be blamed for his PTSD triggers. They're not his fault. I mean, the show never suggests that they're his fault, but again, we're just never really shown why he's evil or dangerous. He's funny, he tells people to gargle his ballsack. He warns Huey that he'll slap him in the face if Huey tries to broach a topic that Soldier Boy doesn't want to discuss, and Huey tries to broach the topic and Soldier Boy slaps him in the face. I mean, excellent. He doesn't know what the internet, GPS, or Bluetooth are. Funny old man ignorance. His Bill Cosby comments are played for laughs, but also he has PTSD.
Bill Cosby is America's dad, and I'll tell you one thing, he would be caught dead in that pussy gear.
Lot to unpack there.
Cos. That's a real man. Holy shit, did he make some strong drinks.
Sure, Soldier Boy is extremely casually racist, sexist, and homophobic. He asks for the chop socky oriental sauce from McDonald's. He makes comments about Bill Cosby being the father of America, but making suspiciously strong drinks. He sees a man carrying a baby on TV and asks, "This passes for a man today? Christ on a cross." But besides these displays of general ignorance, he's not really a threat. His ignorance is more played for laughs than anything else. At the end of episode 7, Soldier Boy reveals that he is Homelander's father, in the sense where he donated some nut that was later used to create Homelander. Okay, I wonder how this will pay off. In the final episode, he tells the boys about his dad, who was a horrible man to him growing up, telling Soldier Boy how disappointed he was in him, how he never fathered him properly, only to, less than an episode later, tell Homelander that he's disappointed in him to absolutely zero effect or build up, because again, pacing. So, an hour ago, we found out who Homelander's dad was. The show gives us no time to let Homelander or Soldier Boy process this news or have any proper conversation amongst themselves about it. Especially since one of Homelander's biggest hang-ups is that he never knew who his dad was. And then Soldier Boy just starts talking about how his own dad treated him, and how his own dad told him that he was a disappointment. And then Soldier Boy tells Homelander that he's a massive disappointment. And then he's gone. 60 minutes of that amidst all the other plot lines, pacing. It just makes it come across as though Soldier Boy was only canonically made Homelander's dad so that he could tell Homelander that he was disappointed in him. I mean, potentially it could have been set up from the beginning, but that is the only reason narratively that they made him his dad, just so that he could go, "I'm so disappointed in you," and Homelander could be really upset by that. There's no other reason whatsoever why they would have made him his parent. So, you know, maybe it was planned from the start, but it doesn't seem like it was planned from the start. Do you see what my issue is now? Like, was it planned from the beginning, and they just have terrible pacing? Or was it just a twist that they pulled out of their arse? I have no idea. At the end of the season, in a huge bust-up with Homelander, Billy, and Christ knows who else, and believe me, we will cover it when it's relevant, Soldier Boy's PTSD is triggered and he almost nukes the building they're fighting in when Maeve suddenly rushes him, pushing him out the window, and he explodes. No one dies, not even him or Maeve. Everyone in the building is completely unharmed, which again I'll get to, but he gets put back on ice, presumably to be wheeled out at a later date, whenever they need to spice up a season with casual racism again, and Maeve loses her powers. Her character decides to leave the show to be with her girlfriend, and it's about 20 hours too late. Number 7. The power creep has flown out of proportion now. So, let's start with the obvious. Compound V. Compound V was initially introduced as an extremely dangerous way to give people superpowers by injecting it into them as babies. Many don't survive. Injecting it into an adult is almost guaranteed to kill them, with a few, and I mean a tiny few, exceptions. The older you get, the more likely it is to kill you. Although, Compound V can be injected into existing soups to enhance their powers, as seen by Popclaw's death, soups can overdose on it, being one of the few things that can actually kill them. By the end of season 2, it is as abundant and deadly as ketchup. It gets used on an entire institute of people, Sage Grove. It gets reused on Kimiko with zero penalty or consequence when she wants her powers back. It looks like it hurts a bit. It gets used on Victoria Newman's teenage daughter to keep her safe from Homelander, even though the show implies Homelander can still easily kill her, which begs the question on why she used the Russian roulette Compound V on her daughter knowing that it could kill her. But her daughter doesn't die and never shows up in season 3 again regardless, putting a weirdly abrupt end to an entire plot line, so problem solved, I guess. So when Compound V begins to become a bit too abundant, but the show is struggling to keep this power creep under control, they introduce Compound V24, which is a temporary Compound V that can only be used between 3 and 5 times per person before killing said person. Compound V24 lasts for some amount of time, whatever amount of time is needed for the character to achieve what they need the injection for. It can be injected, and it seems to hurt a little bit, But then you're 100% good to go with it. And although Billy gets like this nasty compound V24 hangover the first time he uses it, he and Huey start to use it basically whenever they need to, having 5 chances each, 10 chances between them, to solve any problem that faces them with temporary superpowers in a season of 8 episodes. 10 get out of jail free cards in an 8 episode season. Yeah, the stakes really start to plummet. Not even considering the fact that there are several non-superpowered main characters, giving us basically infinite get-out-of-jail-free cards to be used whenever. Billy Butcher uses 5 compound V24 injections and, after collapsing, goes to the hospital where they run some tests and tell him that his brain is essentially looking like Swiss cheese and that he will die very soon. Billy asks how soon, and the doctor obligingly tells him that he has as many as 18 months left. The gaps between this show's seasons are quite long, but seasons of this show only really last like a week, maybe a month. Sometimes a few months go between seasons, but realistically we could comfortably have 5 more seasons of Billy Butcher before he dies, if he even dies. Some hero could just come along and heal him. They could invent compound V25, which just reverses all of the damage that he's taken. Or maybe he could just miraculously recover, or just outlive the odds and go on for a few more years. The possibilities are endless, the power creep is real, and there is nothing in this show that is ever of a concern anymore. This kind of bleeds into the wider issue that the show has, and one that keeps kind of feeding the power creep. Having the characters grow so wildly out of proportion that there's no longer any real danger. The showrunners are just too scared to kill anybody major. So, right. Black Noir died, right? The most recent episode of The Boys aired on July 8th, 2022. But interviews with the showrunners were published a day later on the 9th of July, confirming that Black Noir would be returning in season 4. Kripke said, "Fortunately for Vought, a silent character in a mask can be recast." Saying that basically Black Noir died, but Vought doesn't care, so they just replace him and nobody will ever know. And Black Noir will be returning next season. Is it really hard to pretend for a moment that this show has stakes? In season 1, Starlight was in danger, as she became trapped in the Venus flytrap that is Vought Tower, under Homelander's thumb. She put herself directly in the firing line by helping Huey in his coup against them. By season 2, Huey is in hiding, and Starlight is walking on eggshells with a furious Homelander. By season 3, Starlight is still in Vought and nothing has happened to her of any consequence. And one minute she's in danger, Homelander is angry, people are tracking her down and hunting her. The next minute, she's not in danger, she's got limited political power within Vought. The CEO of Vought likes her, he supports her and won't let Homelander bully her. He loses his job, Starlight's in danger, she's a hostage, she comes and goes as she pleases. The media like her, the media hate her, she's a super terrorist in disguise. Now she's okay, she's going out with Homelander, she brings Vought shit to light in an Instagram live, she blows the whistle. Now she's doing stuff but she has to keep it quiet, she's still in the 7, nobody fires her. Starlight's subterfuge was initially one of the most anxiety-racking aspects of the show, but now she's so inconsistent that there's zero tension anymore. In early seasons, she's like a little mouse, cowering right under the nose of a hungry cat waiting to pounce. Homelander, obviously, one mistake and she's dead. Now she fucks around and doesn't ever need to find out. What's she doing here? What's her goal? Take down Vought? Okay, but what are the stepping stones? What's our 5-year plan? Is there a scrum board I can check? Any ongoing Jira tickets? By the time the show introduces Soldier Boy, Homelander has been pretty thoroughly neutered by the story. In the first season, he was a terrifying entity held in place only by the vague promise of public adoration, and a mummy figure he also occasionally had sex with. In season 2, he starts flexing his super muscles and making threats, and by season 3, he's washed. All his threats have had to fall short in order to keep the main characters alive, so we know that he doesn't follow through on anything he promises. If the season had either the balls to kill main characters or had ended earlier, Homelander's threat could have increased exponentially until one final savage face-off, but since the show seems to want to drag itself on forever, he's all bark and no bite, and his scary villain speeches have become very hollow. Not only that, but Homelander's physical power was always a concern. His laser eyes and their consequences are often shown in their full might. We see what actually happens if somebody uses laser eyes on a human body. They're basically a one-shot hit scan on anyone, besides some other supes including Stormfront, who just uses them as a kinky sex aid. Homelander was the strongest man in the world, easily, and we're told that again and again, but during the episode Herogasm, he comes up against Soldier Boy and a Compound V'd Billy Butcher who team up against him. Soldier Boy is apparently stronger than Homelander, but it takes two of them combined plus a bit of Huey to find some kind of stalemate against Homelander. The fight takes place in a single room and they're just whacking each other's heads on walls and punching each other, but there's no physical, visible reaction to this from the House or the fighters. It's such a weightless fight, there's no stakes, throwing each other around with loud slam noises added in post. Obviously it becomes a draw, the four of them are fan favourites, not one of them is going to actually get killed, come on. Jensen probably costs too much to be dropped now, but when everyone is super strong, but also perfectly matched in strength, they're all just weak. The same goes for the final fight right at the end of the series. Maeve and Homelander face off, the two strongest members of the Seven, but they're missing all of their punches, and said punches are denting cabinets or just lightly knocking the plaster on the walls, which is a far cry from what we've been warned about. You'd have to go all the way back to the start of season 1 to see how strong Maeve actually is. Like I've been saying, she is just unbelievably underutilized as a character. We never see her in action, but while she doesn't exactly have any powers, she is extremely physically strong. But there's no weight to her or Homelander's movements, so the whole fight between them is just actually kind of boring to watch. Sat there saying nothing of any particular remark, knowing all of the characters are going to live at the end because the showrunners are just too scared to hurt anyone. I was like, damn, this is kind of a Marvel movie now, and I'm really bored of those. The first few seasons of this show involved our cast creeping around under the eye of Sauron that was Homelander. One wrong move and they're all dead. Every step had to be taken so carefully, and every mistake had deadly consequences. Season 3 had Huey and Soldier Boy getting attacked by a nun, and Huey screaming hard pass on this exorcist shit as he ran away, in probably one of the worst written lines in television. It's no longer tiptoeing around the feet of Goliath, it's running around and screaming and not quite ever being funny enough to justify it.
No! Hard pass on this exorcist shit!
Number 8. Homelander is just not the danger he used to be. See, Homelander, in my opinion, is the best and worst part of this show. In the first season, he is a true danger. Every choice made in his presence or about him is a concerted effort to keep him from just going ballistic and murdering everybody. His regard for human life is just non-existent. In season 2, he holds Becca, Butcher, and her son Ryan hostage. You can see that Becca is terrified of him, but she can't escape him. She can't go anywhere, she can't leave, she can't tell Homelander to go away, she can't hurt him. She has to sit very quietly and play along with everything Homelander wants her to do, or he'll take Ryan away. She is completely helpless, there's nothing she can do, and no one will help her. All she can do is wait for Homelander to get bored and move on to his next fascination, or for him to just steal her son, probably again out of boredom. She has no options. I love the scenes with this horrifying little family because you know full well that Becca is completely trapped. You can feel it. You can imagine her trying so many different options and knowing they will all fail. It's really scary and really well written. He sees himself and his son as gods and sees his position as a painful and lonely one. Homelander can do whatever he wants and physically no one can stop him, but to get what he wants from people, adoration, he has to play ball. But there will always be more people. He knows that better than anything, so if he wants someone to be dead, unless they hold off access to him from the adoration of others, like Vault's CEO, he'll just kill them. That's really scary. But, as with all of Homelander's other moments of tension, there's a point where it either has to come to a boil or it peters away and loses its momentum. And this specific story does come to a boil, which is probably why it carries into season 3 so well and so naturally with Homelander and Ryan's relationships, but all of his other tensions just fall flat. His mummy figure is killed by him, and instead of becoming this untethered and ruthless monster, he continues doing what he's always done. His PR is such an issue that people are directly protesting him. He fantasizes about murdering them. He goes nuts on TV. Everyone thinks he's alright, then it doesn't really become a pressing issue anymore. More background noise that the brilliantly played Ashley occasionally brings up when discussing his ratings. His obsession with creating supervillains to fight falls by the wayside. His constant threats to Starlight eventually become monotonous. He's so placid that he visits Billy Butcher to chat, knowing that Billy wants him dead, compared to the boys having to go into hiding hiding at the end of season 1. Homelander will kill side characters. Supersonic, for example, is a promising side character until he is murdered. Black Noir is kind of murdered in the last episode of season 3, only to be immediately reconfirmed to be returning in season 4. Sure, you know, it's a different character under the mask, but it's still Black Noir, and he will still be played by Nathan Mitchell, so it doesn't really count. But since the writers are apparently incapable of killing any major characters, all of Homelander's threats are completely hollow. He never makes good on them, so, you know, who cares? By refusing to end his stories with any meaningful conclusion, more choosing to draw them out just for hours at a time, the tension just kind of burns out. I don't even know what Homelander wants anymore. His son to like him, the public to like him, well, they do, so what? By the end of season 3, we learn that Homelander is weaker than everybody thought, be that through power creep or through Vought propaganda. Kripke, one of the showrunners, confirmed that in their 1v1 at the end of season 3, Maeve may well have won that fight if they continued, and that despite fans' assumptions, Homelander was not actually holding back when he fought her. But if he's not that powerful, then why can he hold his own against Soldier Boy, Billy, and Huey, who are going all out with the intention of killing him, Soldier Boy apparently being the most powerful superhero of all time? I saw a few people argue that Homelander is more powerful because by the end of season 3 he has the support of the people, but he's literally cheered by a crowd of people in one specific location, in one specific situation. There's probably like 500 people there at most. This show has shown us that public opinions can change on a whim, so why is this any different? The idea that Homelander now just has the power to do whatever he wants, just this free pass to murder, is surely untrue. He could always do whatever he wanted. This idea that he can now go nuts because he's got the sign-off from a bunch of Trump supporters doesn't really hold too much water. Yeah, you know, he killed somebody in front of a crowd of people, but I fail to see why this is the Trump card he needed, if you'll pardon the pun. I suppose it's trying to show that Ryan now thinks that murder is cool, which is setting up an interesting character arc for Ryan in the future. But I mean, the actor's really young. He's definitely an early teenager. The character he's playing is a really young kid. He's got a long way to go until he's kind of grown up or had a chance to mature in any way. So we'll probably see his rise to power in like 5 seasons. What a long game to play. The series has just gone on too long. The suspense around Homelander has broken, as inevitable as it is, and he's nothing now, just a smiling face. Yeah, you know, he's strong, but he's not that strong, and until the writers are willing to kill off a few of the main cast, he just never will be. Season 3, episode 5, he has a mirror argument with himself, and just all the subtlety flies out the window. Now he's just a Joker stand-in. Number 9. I just don't understand what everybody's problem is. So at the start of season 2, we meet MM and Huey as they speak to their FBI informant, whose head promptly explodes. In a panic, they run into a van and drive away. Throughout the series, this happens quite a few times. Who's doing it? The tension is palpable. We spend ages deliberating when, in season 3, we find it is Congresswoman Victoria Newman, who has been in a long-standing fight to hold Supes accountable and decrease collateral damage, which she has been really successful at, reducing collateral by 60% over the course of 1 year. Turns out she's a Vought mole working for the CEO, feeding Vought information about Supes that they can use and getting favours in return for her political movement. But, like, I googled why she was a bad guy to find out why she was a bad guy. Not that I couldn't tell she was bad. Everybody doesn't like her, she has to operate in secret, she talks about what she's doing being bad. But the show never really makes super clear what she's doing that we shouldn't like her for. There's one scene where she meets Starlight and they have this little face-off where she's like, oh, come on, I know you know what I am. Let's team up, let's join forces. And Starlight just tells her to fuck off, and I remember just being a little bit confused. Particularly when Homelander blackmails Victoria, threatening to kill her teenage daughter if she doesn't sell Stan Edgar out. And she does, and now she's feeding Homelander information under the threat of death. Victoria then injects her daughter with Compound V to give her superpowers to protect her from Homelander, and she's still scared enough to do whatever Homelander wants. Like, she's acting out of fear, sure, but I couldn't understand why Starlight and Victoria hated each other. Aren't they going for similar things, I thought? And then I realised it's not Victoria's motivations that were the issue. She is very clear. It's Starlight and Huey and all that lot whose motivations have just entirely lost their way. So it got me thinking, why did I have to Google why is Victoria Newman the bad guy? And it wasn't just me. If you Google that, other people were asking that as well. At first, I thought it was because of Newman's characterization herself. But I've realized that she is really obviously the bad guy, and it's because she's a double agent for Vought. I've realized, oh yeah, actually, you know what? That was super clear the whole time. She is obviously a bad guy. She pretends to be an opposing force, holding the supers accountable, being kind of like a balancing weight for Vought themselves, when in reality she is just working for Vought, feeding them information. She is a mole. The problem with her is actually really clear. But I think the reason I had to Google it, the reason I didn't understand at the time, was because I could not for the life of me remember what the boys were really trying to achieve anymore. Sure, their overall goal is presumably to overthrow Vought and kill Homelander, and, you know, maybe dismantle the corporation. And Victoria would have reason to help them kill Homelander, being that she and her daughter are held hostage by him. But they haven't really made many of these steps. Most of the season is just spent searching for Soldier Boy, and by the end of the season, Soldier Boy goes back on ice, so they don't really achieve anything by doing that. The incredible motivation of Season 1, finding justice for Huey after his girlfriend died, is gone. They didn't even necessarily find justice, but their goals just slowed down. See, they enlist Soldier Boy to kill Homelander, and he attempts to because of the agreement he's made with them, but he also seems to take some kind of personal issue with Homelander. But besides when they fight, they never speak to each other at all. They don't know each other, beyond the reveal that Soldier Boy is Homelander's dad, so this weird personal beef comes off random and hollow. Billy and Homelander agree to go scorched earth and kill each other. Why? I'm confused by this. Why doesn't Homelander kill Billy? Maybe he finds their fights fun, sure, but to literally visit Billy in his home and be like, Billy, can we maybe fight one day? Was so weird, especially since Billy is human here, no compound V24. How did Homelander assume that such a fight would go down? This random agreement these two have is stupid. There, I said it. But somehow even more stupid is, to me, why MM hates Soldier Boy. So when MM began to feed us the breadcrumbs that Soldier Boy killed his family, I was intrigued. Soldier Boy is one of those old-timey dudes. He's not particularly racially motivated, but it very much affects his thought process, especially when Soldier Boy references his time with Liberty, Stormfront. I was wondering what deep-rooted trauma MM was holding on to. However, we discover that MM's family was killed when Soldier Boy was fighting somebody outside their apartment building. MM woke his family up to show them the fight outside. Soldier Boy threw a car. He accidentally obliterated the building MM lived in and killed his family. MM now holds a deep-rooted grudge against a man who doesn't even know he exists. I don't understand why they didn't just make Soldier Boy kill MM's family directly. Were they that scared of making him look like a bad guy? In which case, see my previous point about Soldier Boy, because I just don't understand. I guess this is supposed to be a callback to Huey's trauma in Season 1, and an observation on how MM might have dealt with it back in the day, but we don't see MM go up against the same media behemoth that Huey goes up against. We know that his dad died due to the stress of trying to seek justice, but it's not until a few seasons later that we learn this was due to Soldier Boy, so you would be well within your right to have actually forgotten that whole thing happened. And while Soldier Boy is a knob, it's still not really his direct fault. More Vought is a corporation that protected him, so I don't get MM's specific murderous issue here. And finally, number 10. It's just a Marvel show now. That's right, the kind of Marvel show I was trying to escape from, except with dick jokes and occasional satire. In some ways, it feels like it's trying to follow the lead of shows like Rick and Morty, lots of crude shock humour and very little substance. I spoke to one person who insisted it's not obvious enough that Stormfront is a bad guy. Yeah, she's a Nazi, yeah, she does bad things, but I don't think the show is trying hard enough to show us that Nazis are bad. So you know what, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's solid gold and I'm just a fucking idiot. Maybe it's not blank-faced enough. Maybe I'm just a bad guy. There was even a point at the end where Huey rattles off some line along the lines of, everybody lives, even if they don't deserve to.
We save everyone, even if they don't deserve it, especially if they don't deserve it.
And everybody looks at each other and smiles and nods in agreement. And God almighty, can these people give Nathan Quaid a good line? He's a good actor. Stop feeding him shit. It literally sounded like the lines from the movies they parody themselves earlier in the show. It was literally straight out of one of the grossly over-dramatized Homelander films that they take the piss out of. The best character arc in my opinion was A-Train, only his character arc concluded about 20 hours too late, where he actually realises the fragility of his mortal brother and what it's like to lose a loved one to a suit, and then to have to try and scrape back what justice he can get against the Vought Corporation, who, surprise surprise, are not interested in helping him find justice for his injured loved one either. He finds himself in Huey's shoes. The shoes he put Huey in himself. It was cool, and at some point he basically nods his head to Huey, apologises genuinely, and then that's kind of it. I mean, I guess it's alright. It's a payoff for a setup that happened almost 30 hours ago, but it's a payoff nonetheless. It was okay. The power creep in this season grows so fast that everybody's just on even ground. So nothing ever gets done. The only named characters to die are Blue Hawk, an obvious stand-in for racist Blue Lives Matter weirdo types, and the people who betrayed Soldier Boy. no one gets hurt, there's no consequences for anything that happens. We finish the season with more or less the same number of people we started it with. Plot lines go nowhere, everyone runs around squealing cringe dialogue, it's just slapstick. And ultimately, kinda bad. Yeah, sorry, I just don't really think the show is that great anymore, to be honest. And, you know, that's nothing on the actors. The material they're given, they smash. They act their hearts out. Every character is played by somebody who genuinely seems like they love to be there. Seriously, don't take this as hate on any of the actors. They are great. It just seems like the writing has taken this major nosedive. Particularly because their parts to play are hyper-realistic and often based on parody. I feel like it's really hard to write an in-depth character who's just more there to parody like Superman or Wonder Woman or something. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, comment your own thoughts on the show. Who's your favourite character? Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? What would you have done differently given the opportunity? Thank you as always to my patrons for their unending support. Thank you specifically to Carissa Fulcher, Sam Jones and Julia for being my highest tier patrons. Make sure to check out my Patreon for those 5-minute reviews, and my other social links are in the description below. Check out my other videos. Thank you to Flexispot for sponsoring this video, and I'll catch you lot in the next one. Bye!